In this tutorial, we're going to be learning how to do some shooting. So we're going to give our player a gun. So we're going to start with the T01 platformer basic tutorial. So I'll just make a copy of this entire folder of my game folder. And I'll rename it as T04 shooter. And then I'll open Godot. And then I'll import that folder that I just opened. And all right, looking good. So this is my T01, all the original stuff. So with my character, and if I play, you'll see that this is that original game that we had on the very first tutorial. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is make a new scene. So we click the plus here, and that scene is going to be character body 2D. So we go other node, and we find character body 2D. And we're going to give it, as usual, a sprite 2D and also a collision shape. I'm going to give it a texture. I'll just use the default picture that we have in here. As always, you are free to use whatever picture you want. I'll go into my 2D workspace, and I guess we want to make it sort of look like a bullet. So I'm just going to make it much smaller. Remember, our default size is how big the player is. We want our bullet to be substantially smaller than that. And maybe kind of a flat rectangle or something like that. We'll go with that for now, and collision shape. We'll give it a rectangle and just make it match our sprite. Let's rename our node to be bullet, and we'll save the scene. Save. Okay, so our bullet scene is now saved. Let's go now into our player scene. Okay, so if we go into the 2D workspace of our player scene, this is our player, and we want the bullet to spawn. I want to give it a spot for it to spawn from, because if it spawns from, like by default, if we spawn the bullet from the player code, it's just going to spawn like right in the middle here, but that's going to collide with the player, which we don't want. Create node 2D. And just this node 2D is just going to hold like the position that we're going to spawn from. And let's just move it over to here outside of the player itself. If you want, you can make this actual have a sprite and like make it into a gun shape. We will be doing that in a later tutorial, but for now, I just want to have this position. So that's all I need for now. Again, if you want, you can make it a little fancier. All right, so let's go back to, let's just save that and then go back to our bullet scene and add a script. We add the green plus for the script here. And yeah, just empty is fine. Create. All right, so what do we want here? We want to create a few variables. So I want to go var pos and var dir and var speed. Okay, so this is position that the bullet is going to start from. This is direction that it's going to go, and this is the speed that we want it to go at the beginning. Actually, let's give that a value of, say, 500. Func ready. In ready, we'll say global position equals pos. The ready function is a built-in function in Godot that runs whenever this scene is created. So as soon as the bullet scene is created, in other words, when we spawn the bullet, it's going to run the stuff in this function. And so that would be global position equals pos. And so global position is a built-in variable that every scene has, which just tells Godot where, the position, the XY position that it's supposed to be. In this case, we're assigning pos, which we don't know what pos is yet because we haven't created it yet. I mean, we've created the variable here, but we haven't given it any value, because when we spawn the bullet is when we're going to give pos to this bullet scene. Okay, so that's all we need to do in the ready, and then we'll go physics process. Yeah, so you saw, like, I could have just typed in physics process, but the pop-up kind of appeared. And so I just said, hey, I don't have to type that, so I'm just going to click on that, and it just filled in the rest for me. That's because physics process is, again, a built-in function in Godot, but also, like, it does come with these things, which if you type it yourself, you don't necessarily need, but it's fine. If you get more advanced, you might start using some of these things. Anyways, what are we going to say here? Velocity equals vector to dir times speed 0. Okay, so velocity is a built-in thing in Godot, and so we're assigning it to a vector 2. If we recall from tutorial 2, velocity has two aspects, which is the x velocity and the y velocity, and so vector 2 will give us those two things. And so basically the x velocity is here, which is dir times speed. Speed is right here, 500. Dir is another thing that we're going to get from when we spawn the bullet. We're going to give it a dir. Okay, and then 0 in the y direction, which means our bullet is not going to travel like in the y direction, like it's not going to travel up and down. It's only going to go straight horizontally, which is what we want for a bullet in, well, in this case, at least, this is what we want. Var collision equals move and collide velocity. All right. So what's happening here? This may seem a little familiar. We haven't seen it before, but we have seen move and slide before, which was what we used in tutorial 2 to move the player around. So this is very similar in that it moves the thing around, in this case the bullet, not the player. But it is special because it has this collide, and why it has this collide is that because it's going to detect if it collides with any other objects or any other scenes. And if it does, it's going to give us back some information. In the brackets here, we have velocity times delta. Velocity comes from up here, which we just created. And then delta is basically from here. So delta is the amount of time that passes every frame. And so basically what we're saying is we want to move this bullet however much we would have moved in 1/60th of a second. And if that bullet is somewhere where it has collided, that's where this collide comes in. If it's somewhere where it has collided with another object, then we're going to return a value here, which is, I guess, true. If it is not going to collide with another object, then that's fine. We can just, go on and the bullet can keep on moving. But if the bullet, we predict that it's going to crash into something, we're going to make the bullet disappear. And so let's do that next, which is if collision Q free. Okay, so basically we have a new kind of if here. Usually we have an if with a equals equals. In this case, we have just if collision. So that means if collision is true. That means, well, collision is up here. That means if this thing is true. This thing would have been true if it had hit an object. That's what this move and collide is all about. And so if it would have hit an object, then we're going to queue free it. If you recall, queue free means delete this scene. So basically, if it bumps into something, delete it. Otherwise, it just keeps going. At this point, we're finished with the bullet script, so we'll just save that with Control S. And now we need to make it fire, so we go into the player script, and we actually need to add an input here. So we go to Project Settings, Input Map, and add a new action, and we can just call that fire. And for the fire, whatever key that you want, I'll just say, I guess, F for fire, but you could make it whatever you want. Okay, so in physics process, after all the other stuff that it has, that's all the movement stuff that was from the template. We're now going to check if the fire button has been pressed. So we'll say if input, if action just pressed, and we want the fire action, then let's just create the bullet, I guess. Var bullet equals, actually, we need to make this into a preload. And so let's do that first. Okay, so if we want to create a scene from another scene, like in this case, we want to create the bullet scene from the player scene, we need to load it in. So we'll go up at the variables here and we'll say var bullet path equals preload. Okay, and it gives us a choice here of the scenes that we could preload, and in this case there's the bullet scene, bullet.tscn, and we can just use that. Okay, so that's ready. And in the physics process, so this was all done in the template, as we recall from the first one. Let's go to the bottom of all this movement stuff, and we'll do some bullet stuff down here. We'll add var bullet equals bullet path dot instantiate. So this bullet path came from right here. So we're actually referencing the bullet scene when we say bullet path here. And dot instantiate means we're basically spawning it. Instantiate means spawn. And we're assigning it to this variable called bullet because we need to do a couple things to it. So we're going to say bullet.dir equals direction. And we're going to say bullet.pause equals. And here we're actually going to reference, you recall that when we're in the player, let's go back into the player view. Here's the player tree, and we had this node 2D. If you recall, this is that firing position where we're going to spawn the bullet from, is this node 2D. So we're going to give the bullet that position. So let's go back to our GD script here. Bullet.pos equals, and I'm going to actually drag it from my scene tree over here, and I'm going to drag it here, and it'll automatically put the $sign. So the $sign means it's referencing it from like from a node over here. Okay. You can type it in, $sign and then whatever name you have over here, or you can just drag it in from there. So we're just going to give it the global position of this bullet position node. And that's going to go into the bullet dir and the bullet pause. And if we go to the bullets.gd, we will see this is the dir and the pause over here, which are being used right here and right here to basically initialize the bullet and start it up and tell it what it's supposed to do and where it's supposed to go. Next thing that we need to do is add it to the scene tree. So we're going to say get parent dot add child bullet. So get parent, the player is, we're in player.gd. The parent of player.gd is actually the level, because we're only running this in the level. And so you can see that the player is a child of the level. This get parent gives us the level. Add child, so I want to add a child to this level, and I want to add the bullet, basically the bullet scene. And so, well, I guess we'll see if it works here. All right, so we play this thing, and we press the fire button, and we get some errors. So let's just go ahead and fix those. So a couple of things are problematic. I believe over here, this node 2D that we brought in to give the bullet somewhere to spawn from, that should actually be a child of the sprite 2D. And let's actually go ahead and give that a name so that we know kind of what it is, and we'll call it bullet pause. And so we're going to change this line here. So that because we changed the structure of our thing, so we're gonna just drag that in again, and it's gonna become $sprite2d / bullet pause global position, and so that should work a little better. And I believe we have a small mistake in our bullet.gd. This should have an underscore in front of it, so this already, that underscore is critical to this thing actually working. Let's try that again. And when I press fire, you see a bullet has appeared, and there we go. So we have a problem in that they're appearing, but they're not really moving. And I believe this is a problem with direction, because if I'm moving in fire, then it kind of goes. So yeah, we're gonna have to fix that. Go to our player.gd, and we come up to our variables, and we need a new variable, and we'll call it facing. So it's just keeping track of which direction that my player is in fact facing. It's a little hard to see because we do have as our player sprite is symmetrical, but we do want it to face in different ways when we're trying to move in different directions. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the code that we have right here. So this is the movement code that came in from the template. And so we're going to do a little bit of adjustments here. I'm just going to isolate this part so we can see it more easily. And so what's going to happen is direction. So direction comes from here, which comes from the input. And the input is basically either left or right. These are the default ones. And this input, or this direction, is actually going to give us either -1 or 1 or 0, depending on if the left button is pressed, nothing is pressed, or the right button is pressed. And so direction basically is going to be equal -1, 0, or 1. And so if it's 0, then this else is not going to do anything, so I'm just going to bypass. But if it is in fact -1 or 1, then we're going to go in here, and we do want to change something, because I am pressing a button of some kind. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to add this line of code, facing equals direction. Facing, of course, is the new variable that I created up here. Okay, and I'm going to set that variable to the direction, which is either -1 or 1 if I'm inside this if. So now that I kind of know which direction I'm facing, I'm actually going to put some extra code in here. If facing equals -1, I'm going to put my sprite, I'm going to drag in that sprite here, sprite2d .scale.x equals -1. So what the scale.x does is it actually flips it. So if I'm -1, that means I'm flipping this thing. If it's 1, then it's like the normal way. Okay, so I'm just going to say else, and then I'm going to have the same thing except equal it to 1. So let's just take a look at my player in the 2D view here. And yeah, okay, so there's my bullet position way up here. Let's just pull it a little closer. So if I highlight sprite 2D here, and if I go to the scale, I'm just going to adjust the scale in the inspector so that we can see what's going on. So right now scale is X on the X is 1.0. If I put it at -1, you can see that it goes the other way, and the bullet pos is now on the left-hand side. Oh, it actually adjusted the Y as well. I don't want to adjust the Y. I only want to adjust the X. So I'm going to click on this chain to break the chain. So usually it goes together. And so now when I adjust the X, the Y does not adjust. Oh, it still does because it didn't break the chain. Let's try that again. I want Y to be 1, and I want to be able to just adjust the X from 1 to -1. You can see the bullet pos thing moved back to 1, and the bullet pos thing moved. So this is what I want, because the bullet position is going to depend on which rotation I'm on. If you have a sprite that has like directionality, then the sprite is actually going to change. But this one happens to be symmetrical, so then you can't really see the change when I flip it over. Okay, I believe that is it. So let's try it. Still seems to be stuck. Let me see what has gone wrong here. All right, so what I did wrong was down here we have bullet.dir equals direction, but we actually made that new variable called facing just so that we could solve that problem. And so let's give it this facing instead. And so this dir and pos, bullet.dir and bullet.pos actually goes over to our bullet script. And so that the direction over here is now going to have like that facing either -1 or 1. And so now let's go back and see if it works. And we can shoot, and it goes as expected. I go the other way, and it goes as expected there as well. Let's just check one more thing, which is that the queue free works. And so I'm going to go to my level scene and just maybe put another static body here. Static body 2D. Let's just duplicate this one. Right click, duplicate. All right, so where is it? Here we go. And I want to change the shape a little bit so that it is some kind of, oops, not correct, not correct. Okay, maybe I need to make a new one. I'm just going to delete that one, and I'm just going to create a new static body 2D. And we will give it a sprite and collision shape. And we'll give it our usual default texture. Here it is. And let's make it like a skinny tall one, like that. And collision shape will be the same as the sprite. Okay, so that's done. And so let's try that again. And if I shoot this way, it's fine. But if I shoot this way and it hits the wall, it gets eaten up. But if I'm on the other side, then it's totally fine. So that's great. So yeah, there we go. Shooting is done. Again, this is a little bit more complicated. So if you are having problems, just let me know and I'll come in and help you out. That's all for this tutorial, and see you in the next one.